Hello, everyone, and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap for November the 15th of 2018. I am Nick here alongside Chris. And Chris, it's about time. We gotta roll initiative, roll up our characters, and play the new super awesome dark fantasy game that's just come out.
Ooh, all right, cool. Give me some of the details. I love tabletop
Okay.
games.
Okay, so you are in a world that is overrun by creatures of darkness,
Okay.
and all of the women in it uh, exist to be raped.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that like the gimmick mechanic of it?
Well, you actually joke like that. There are a multitude of shitty games that have been made by people where yes, there are very in-depth rape mechanics.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I'm
so
unfortunately well aware of that.
yeah, so actually that's something yeah, I might just like look up the descriptions of shitty games and just start reading that instead of actually talking about the series because it's kind of simple, honestly. I don't know if there's a lot to talk about.
There's, I think, a good bit to talk about, if only because we're giving a recommendation was for Goblin Slayer, and the reason it's
Yes.
primarily happening now is because it is a somewhat of a hot topic,
Hmm.
somewhat simmering down, but a hot topic within the anime manga community because the anime for it recently came out and animated the first scene. The first episode includes a rather graphic portrayal of rape, which is the first chapter of the or the manga, basically. So it sort of
Hmm.
caught a larger audience, which has caught onto a larger discussion onto the series as a whole. So there's a lot of people talking about that, and you get a lot of people talking about, you know, is it an awful series because of it? How does it compare because of that?
Right. How can you even include that sort of material in a series? Is there an appropriate way to even address the topic and portray it in manga and so on and so forth?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of discussions going on. So I was not really sure what we were going to get with this. I knew that there was some level of controversy involving rape at the start of the series, and I knew next to nothing outside of that. I read a little bit of some of the discussion that was going on in our Discord about the series because we have a current recommendations tab where whenever we're getting ready for a recommendation, people can kind of put their thoughts there. So I wanted to read some of it because there was some good discussion on the series in there. And I'm trying to think. The best way I can describe this series, Nick, is do you remember when you first started playing D&D and you were like maybe like 16, maybe even younger, I think.
I
Uh,
started playing when I was like 12,
okay.
so
You may have passed over this
no,
curve then.
even younger maybe, but yeah.
You may have passed over this curve then, but there's that first one of those early D&D games you play when a lot of players are like in their early 20s, late teens kind of thing. And it's awful. And everyone makes shitty characters that don't have
Hmm.
character, like actual personalities.
Hmm.
And like one dude's like really oddly aggressive towards things. It's just kind of awkward and uncomfortable. And then you stop playing that game, and you're like, "Is D&D awful?" And then you play it again later, like, "Oh no, it's much better." And that's
You just have to play with the right attitude and the right group kind of thing.
I am curious because this series is a D&D series. Like it's odd because it's not portrayed as a world of D&D, but everything
Right,
is
right.
just D&D, like tabletop adventure. Like there's classes, levels. No characters actually have name. They just kind of go
Yeah.
by their positions. Um, there's the idea of like quest givers and money and experience, kind of in a way. Very
Yeah, people
gamey.
are people are limited to a certain number of spells a day and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very, very video gamey. Not unlike all the many, many anime that are based off of MMOs and stuff like that. Um, and it's just sort of strange because it's not like, again, it's not like the gimmick to that. Like you kind of have to assume the world works in this way, and maybe there's a deconstruction going on here because the entire premise is Goblin Slayer. He's Goblin Slayer. That's his name, as far as anyone really knows or cares, because he only takes quests to slay goblins. The goblins in this universe, they're garbage, Nick. You don't care about goblins. They're poop. They give no money. No one cares about goblins, despite the fact that they ravage farmlands by the countless dozens and hundreds and sometimes even thousands. They're armies of goblins at points, but no one wants to deal with them because it's small peanuts. Because there's also demon lords apparently out there and all this stuff. Except
goblins. It does kind of reveal the contradictory structure of MMOs, where we have these early quests and okay, yeah, early low level adventurers, yeah, go kill some fucking goblins or whatever. It's like, well, you gotta think, it's like, if that's a low level thing, then that means a lot of people are doing it, therefore there must be a lot of goblins out there to kill. But everyone always moves on from them because it's a waste of time. So how many thousands of goblins are there that are constantly attacking people under video game logic? And then it uses that to sit around to explain why they're such a ridiculous threat a lot of the time.
Yeah, and that's what Goblin Slayer is all about, the character in this case. He hates goblins. He despises them. So he only takes missions that go after goblins. And they're like, man, that's, that dude's never going to advance in rank because he's not fighting anything that's worth money. He's just fighting goblins. But, Goblin Slayer doesn't care because those goblins need to pay. That's basically it. I mean, there's not more to this. I wish I could tell you there's more to it, but I don't know. He fights goblins, guys.
Well, you can't forget, Chris, when he explains his tragic backstory. His family was killed by goblins.
You ever been at a table and someone shows up with their ranger and they're like, my name is Derek Orc Slayer and I hate orcs because my family was killed by orcs and I hate orcs and I have a +10 to kill orcs. And you're in a mission and DM's like, you see tracks on the ground. He's like, are they orc tracks? No, not everything is orcs. Derek, you can. It is basically like that. That person shows up to the game and then they find out that the campaign is not structured exclusively around their very narrow specialty. So then they go and write their own story for their character to have, where they are the center of attention, and slaying orcs, or in this case, slaying goblins, is the most important thing that there is in the entire world. And they look like a badass all the time because they're so good at doing this one thing. We kind of gave years ago we did a D&D campaign where Gav played a ranger named Soraya, and she fucking hated goblins and would go out of her way to track down and hunt and kill goblins if the opportunity arose. And we gave him a little bit of crap for it because compared to the other PCs in the group, she was a little bit of a shallow character. But there was a little bit more to that because we kind of dragged Gav kicking and screaming into role playing with the rest of us. That is true.
But in general, it was we just gave him a little bit of shit for it. And he also did not railroad us into can we go and hunt goblins instead, guys? He knew what role he worked as in part of the group. And whenever, important stuff is going on, he's like, okay, this is the role that I will play. And then I'll go along with it doing this. And instead we get no, you have to understand. I swear, one of the unintentionally funniest things that happens in this story is that someone, there are some people who are just, talking and they're like, I wonder what is with these goblins? It's they're constantly attacking people and burning down villages and raping women and all that stuff. Why do they act this way? And he's like, well, think of it like this. Imagine that you're a little kid and one day you say goodbye to your big sister and then you go away. And then when they're away, goblins come and kill your whole family and rape your sister in front of your eyes. And all you can do is hide there, watching as it happens. And you swear that one day you'll kill all of them. And so you train and you train and train. You train to kill goblins. And then you go out and you do it. And sometimes it goes well. Sometimes it doesn't go so well. But you learn from it. You learn the best strategies to kill goblins. And you keep on doing it. And you vow to keep on doing it until every last one of them is dead. They're like, what? Well, what I'm saying is that I'm like the goblin to the goblins. He's like, you didn't answer my question. And he just like took the first opportunity that was presented in the entire series to explain his entire backstory, which was goblins killed my family in front of my eyes, raped my sister in front of my eyes. I fucking hate them. I want to kill all of them. It's like, fair enough. It doesn't make you a very deep character, though, buddy. Your name is Goblin Slayer.
If someone was just like, you want sausage or bacon for breakfast? Bacon. My sister was cooking bacon the morning that the goblins came. Goblins. Have I told you my backstory about goblins yet?
He could have very well just instead been like, my name is Goblin Slayer.
Like, honestly, if you deconstruct this and almost made it more of a comedy, I think this would be some funny shit, because it's almost comedic in premise, because Goblin Slayer...
that at certain points even. It approaches being a comedic series, but it's only in the moments it's like, this got really heavy. I need a little bit of comic relief.
Yeah, it's like, oh, wait, look at these idiots back here. This dwarf and elf that don't like each other. Crazy, right? Like, remember in Lord of the Rings when the dwarf and the elf didn't like each other, but by the end they were friends, and that trope should have died then because it was the first time they ever fucking did it and it was done.
It was 80 years ago.
Does it too. Nick, this series does it too. Where the dwarf and elf don't like each other, but they become friends.
The only part of their relationship that I enjoyed was when the elf was like, because the dwarf was like, oh, you should respect your elders. And the elf was like, I'm 2,000 years old.
There's a lot to this series that, because it's so straight with everything it does, because there's legitimately actual, like, magic weapons and spell scrolls and all these sorts of things, like treasures are inside of goblin things. And, like, they kind of talk about it at points, so, like, why don't you just get broken weapons and just murder goblins en masse? And I don't know, he just kind of gives like a serial killer, like, he's like, no, this is more effective. This is what I need to do. It's like, if you just did a lot of quests to make a lot of money very quickly, which opportunities are thrown at you over and over
constantly again. This guy is so good at his job that an adventuring party sent essentially by the council from Rivendell comes to him and is like, there is an army of darkness approaching and we have heard legends of your deeds, and so we have come to recruit you. And he's like, no, but we need you to kill some goblins. Oh, goblin killing, yes.
It's like, wait, there are goblins to murder? I'm all in.
You had me at goblins. It's like, that is the last thing that I told you.
There are chapters. I feel as though it is almost a requirement that a chapter ends with the notion of like goblin, because there are moments where like a chapter will go by and they'll kind of like get some stuff. Like, they're like, oh, hey, could you help if, I don't know, if I can clean the guild hall or whatever. And he's like, okay, I guess it's my day off. And then at the end of it, they're like, thanks for the work, Goblin Slayer. Is there anything I can do to repay you? And he'll like turn off like a mission that he's like, how about help me with some goblin slaying? Like,
well, we literally just did that. So,
but Nick, what about they have lords? They have lords they have to fight now, and hobgoblins. All these terrifying extra opponents that are so terrifying to beat.
Whatever. Oh god, like it's a weird thing, because the thing about, like, the only thing that we would be talking about, I feel like, is just like, it's just not very good. Except that then you throw in the sex and the rape stuff. And it's like, okay, it's pretty gross. And this series is clearly not good enough to justify just powering through that kind of stuff. There are some interesting ideas in it. The approach that Goblin Slayer takes to killing goblins, which is like, well, I'm going to fight dirty, basically. I feel that that's a pretty, good starting point. A good way to set him apart and say, like, yeah, he doesn't use magical weapons and stuff. He just uses his intelligence. He doesn't use heavy armor. He uses speed and tactics. And that's why he is so effective at killing goblins, is that he beats them at their own game. And that could, I think, be used to, effectively create a sort of deconstructive, like you were talking about, approach to, RPG combat. Make it, if you tweak just a little bit of it, it could easily be, a more funny, lighthearted series. But then it's like, in order to make the goblins out as this massive threat, it's like, oh, but they rape women and kill them. It's like, And it's always portrayed like not in like a horrifying way. Literally, there's a moment of it early on where like it follows an adventuring party, and it's like, you know, all women, and they're
no, Nick. There's one guy in the group who's only significant because everyone in the party either gets raped, murdered, or raped and murdered.
right. So they just set him on fire, I think. So. But they're like, okay, you know, well, the goblins have ambushed us. We have to get away. Don't everyone move. I'll cover our escape. And then a rock hits her in the head. And then it smash cuts to this group gangbang. And it's just like, oh, come on. Like, it's like almost done almost as a joke. Like, it's so sudden.
It feels very, it was amusing to me as I was reading it. Only because every time it happened, like every time it looked like the heroes are about to, like, they were in kind of trouble or like they were in a risk, they were like, here's this character's backstory. So it'll be like this wizard's like, I will fight you, goblins. And it like flashes back to her at the magic universe. And like, we've never seen one with as much skill as you. Here is your staff, treasured forever. I will. And I'm going to be the greatest mage of all time. Hard cut her with like 4 arrows in her chest about to be raped by goblins. And you're like, are we just going to do this every time? And they do. It happens to the fighter. It happens to the monk. It happens to all of them. And you're like, what a weird juxtaposition for these characters who have no names.
It's like, yeah, should have worn shitty armor and always worn a helmet. Come on. Like, all you fucking idiots. You deserve to be raped. It's like, it's just, it's almost arbitrary, the fact that it's done. And it's very lazy to take that approach. And it's also just tone deaf because the first 2 chapters are dedicated to the introduction of Goblin Slayer and him meeting his constant companion through most of the rest of the series, who is a white mage. And she like goes on her first adventure. Her party gets ambushed and decayed by goblins and is killed and raped and stuff. But he manages to come, and Goblin Slayer shows up in order to kill a bunch of people, and he ends up saving her, and she ends up sticking with him and becoming his companion after that. And she just kind of learns like, oh, this is the way I need to do things in order to survive. And that's an interesting relationship, you know, her being pure and innocent and stuff and having to get used to his very unforgiving, straightforward, and harsh way of doing things. But then like, the very next thing that happens after that is we find out where Goblin Slayer stays. Like, he lives in this house with this like childhood friend of his. And the very first thing we see of her is that she sleeps naked and is just like spilling out over everything. You know, she leans over a banister and goes, oh, cleavage everywhere. The first shot you see of her proper is like of her ass and stuff. You just showed in the previous chapter a whole bunch of women being raped. And now you've just exposed the fact that you're doing it this way just in order to be titillating. It has nothing to do with like, oh, look at how horrible it is that these goblins rape women. It's like, oh, hey, yeah, it's horrible that these goblins rape women, but look at their tits while they're getting raped. Hey, it's dumb. And like I said, that wouldn't be so much of a problem if the rest of the series were good enough. Then you could at least say it's like, hey, it's pretty good, except for this one thing. But it's just kind of like a not very good, you know, story about this munchkin D&D player. And so if you throw in that element on top of it, it's just like, okay, well, I don't really want to read it now. So
to play the devil's advocate of rape, which is a great episode title.
The devil's advocate of rape.
I've heard both sides of this, and I will say I think a lot of people do overblow the rape of this series. And by the way, forewarning, there is no tasteful way to talk about this, so I apologize in advance if anybody finds offense to any part of this. I think it's part and parcel with this. There's no delicate way to talk about it. There's the early rape, and that exists in those first 2 chapters. And after that, it really, like, it's not as though every female character you see, you're like, that one's going to get raped. It doesn't actually happen that often. But for the people who say it's that first chapter and nothing, I mean, no, it's not. Because there's like a scene where an army comes up, an army of goblins, and they've tied naked women to their shields to use as like defenses. And you're just like, no, I mean, that's the same shit essentially. Like it's this weird sexual thing that you can't get around. And I'll be honest, before it got to that, goblins were fine. It's actually the element of rape that makes them like this weird thing that exists. Because at first you're like, goblins are a force of nature. They have no characterization or culture to themselves beyond like the pseudo tribalism that they've kind of always colloquially had in like fiction. But they have no real culture to themselves in this series. And you kind of just see them as like they're these malevolent creatures. They exist. They kill. They eat. They're just a force of nature. But then also they rape, and you're like, well, wait, hold on. Forces of nature don't really do that. Also, they get off to sexually torture women. And
hey, wait a minute. Haven't you seen that? Haven't you seen that scene in Evil Dead, Chris? Come on.
Where you're just like, wait a minute. None of this like adds anything to it. It's just kind of awkward and weird. But then you hit the nail on the head where you're like, even if it was that moment and the rest of the series was great, it's irrelevant because the rest of the series is really, really boring. Like, that's the thing that was so stunning to me is I was like, I don't get why people care about this series outside. Like, I feel like the discussion begins and ends in that first chapter because everything after it is like, I don't know, he fights goblins and that's it. He fights goblins. He fights goblins in a cave. He fights an army of goblins. He has to fight new goblins in a new land. It's like, it's the same sort of thing. There's just not a lot of depth to it. Like I know I was reading some people trying to like make the argument that Goblin Slayer himself was autistic in a way, and this was like an interesting exploration. I was like, I could kind of see that in a way, but then I laugh because I'm like, I do not have enough credit for this series to assume that it's anything of what they're attempting, and it's not just supposed to be a shonen hero kind of idiot like. What do you mean we're doing something besides fighting goblins today? All I like is fighting goblins. And it's basically the series in a nutshell. It's just, I don't know, he fights goblins and that's it.
Yeah, in terms of the autistic thing, I think that I think that it's literally just like he has just the one character trait to him. And I think, I mean, there are points where he demonstrates like, okay, clearly this is, deep down, he's a good guy because it's not like, if someone is useless to him, then he'll just, ignore them and go on by. He gives people a chance to actually take themselves out of a situation if he believes that there's a chance that they can't handle it. It's like, hey, the stuff that I do kind of sucks, so you can go home if you want to. He does that multiple times whenever someone, is like comes across a room full of feces and blood and guts and is like, hey, if you can't do this, then just go, So, and he will, actually protect people if he can, but he's also very quick to just, that can't be saved by. So it's one of those things where optimism clashes with reality, basically. And it's one of the character dynamics that exists between him and White Mage. But it really feels like there's just not a whole lot going on in it. Stuff happens, like he'll discover a secret or something like that, and someone will give their whole like big backstory explanation for why they acted a certain way, and he'll just be like, all right, well, I got to kill goblins, so whatever.
He's like, are there goblins left unavenged in your backstory that I may kill?
So it's just not, it's just, whatever. So
I want to touch on something though, because there's actually something that offended me in this series or bothered me more than the actual, like the weird sexual rape scenes. It's the series has this really weird way of treating women and particularly like victims. So the thing that fucked with me the most, it's not even that they did like the two-part, like they create this party of characters just to kill and rape three of them and be like, here's the one survivor, the innocent girl or whatever. There's actually one other survivor and they save her from the goblin rape dungeon. And then they're like, she'll go home and go to temple and never adventure again. Her spirit broken. And I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, that's such a dark way of trying to like say what happens to that character. Like, she doesn't get a chance to be like a cool hero after that or anything. They're just like, well, she was so broken by the rape, she never did anything again. And there's constant.
It's a common story. And like literally, it says that.
Yeah, they're like, it happens all the time. These women get raped by goblins and never adventure again. And they play it again with his sister too. Goblin Slayer's sister, where in her backstory she's like, boys are supposed to protect girls. And it's just like, it's such a weird backwards fucking thing to still have at this point. You're like, I feel like you could have done something else or just not include it. Like, I feel like you could have at least done like, I don't know, make her like a fucking God, who's the movie about like the one woman who goes on like a murder rampage?
Which one? There's a couple.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember the name of it. But essentially, like, what if that monk came back and she was like the Punisher, and she's like, I'm the Goblin Slayer now, bitch. So I'm killing all these goblins. And you're like, I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting at least to see that, rather than just be like, she went on a fucking cart into the wilderness, never be seen again. I don't know. Maybe she's a priest now. Who cares? It's like,
oh no, she's been raped once. You know, she's no longer, you know, important beyond that. So
it was just one of those things. It's just like, this is fucking stupid at this point. And they make like a big deal later on when it's like he has to fight a horde because there's an army of goblins coming, and you're like, oh, is this going to be like the big dramatic thing? And it's like, no, he goes to the like guild and he gets everyone to be his friend and help for very little like effort put into it, and then they just decimate the goblins with like 2 casualties. You're like, what was all the build up to this army, and they just crush it to be like, I don't know.
Why should that sounds like a terrible idea. Why should we do that? Well, you'll help me kill goblins. You had me at killing goblins, Goblin Slayer.
I wish I could give more to these, and I don't think less of anyone who does enjoy this series, because I think there's a lot of people who dig it, and that's fine. You know, it's just a series that it has a couple problematic elements for you. More than anything, it's just so boring that I'm like, I just don't get why people dig it. Like, I heard someone try to say this is what Berserk is like, and I'm like, if this is what Berserk is like, I am never reading Berserk, because that sounds fucking boring.
So let's move on.
High recommendations.
Yay!
It's our November pick of the month, Nick. Our cornucopia of goodness.
We just have like a guy in a suit of armor show up. He kills goblins. 2 thumbs up.
Seriously, I almost want the comedy version of it, where it's just a dude who like walks in and there's like a dragon attacking someone, and he's like,
No.
Does that dragon have goblins with him? No, I'm gone. And everyone's like, no, that dragon's gonna raise our village. And he's just like, no, I only fight goblins because everyone else ignores them. They're like, but a dragon is attacking us right now.
You're ignoring this problem right now.
It's like, no, my logic is perfect.
All right, let's kick into the recap portion, weekly manga recap, with My Hero Academia, number 205, Detour. Tetsu is fucking up Todoroki. Todoroki decides that the only way to actually take him on is to actually use that technique that Endeavor was trying to get him to use before. And so he raises his body temperature and raises it and raises it and raises it. And it gets to the point where even Tetsu is like, oh, crap. And even the heat surrounding him and washing off of him is causing like the cameras to malfunction. And so people who are monitoring the fight are having difficulty actually watching it. And there is a cool shot of him, you know, with his, like, he's going like Super Saiyan with the hair up and fire washing all around him. It is a cool shot. But Tetsu's like, all right, and he just keeps on charging in and attacking Todoroki, and he basically says, like, I can endure this too. And Todoroki says, I'm going to melt you if you keep this up. But Tetsu says that if he's not willing to actually put himself all in during training, then they won't do it when it matters. Or he's even actually willing to die in training here in order to prove that to himself. Doesn't seem like a very good idea.
No, but I feel like someone needs to be like, no, stupid.
Simmer down a little there.
They're like, asshole, you're supposed to not die in training.
We cut over to where Shoji is taking on Tsunotori. She launches a bunch of her horns at him, and Shoji counters by summoning a whole bunch of arms and snags a whole bunch of them out of the air. But Tsunotori directs like one behind him, and it's like, I can grow eyes behind myself, and he grabs the horn. And then Ojiro shows up and whacks her with his tail. Hooray.
He did it, Nick. Hero. Tail dude.
Yay, use my tail.
I wish someone would be like, wow, that was really good, Odro. You know, if you just punched her, we actually would have hurt it a little bit more. Just like invalidate the point of him having a tail to begin with.
You know, you do have that fifth limb, but it's like it's just packed with packing peanuts or something like that. It just boom. It's like being hit by one of those inner tube things that kids use in order to stay afloat in the pool.
That'd be great. They're like, does it have aroma therapy to it? Like, it actually kind of helps you if you hit somebody with it.
Oh,
it
it
like
me.
sends them out. Like, really, like, it de-stresses them. It's kind of nice.
Oh, it's got all these like rubber pucks in it. So then if you get hit with it, it's like, oh yeah, that just really lets my skin breathe better. Oh yeah. It's just like a pool noodle with fur over it. So Ojiro manages to wrap her up with his tail, and they're like, okay, let's go take her into the jail. But at that moment, Honenuki shows up behind them, and he just says, I'll be taking Tsunotori back now. But then we cut away, so we don't really know how that turned out. Tetsu is meanwhile continuing to wail on Todoroki. And so he realizes that basically the only thing that he can do is just blast Tetsu in order to get him to back off a little bit. And Honenuki shows up again. He's like, I can move really quickly, apparently. Hooray! And he just starts sinking Todoroki into the ground. Stuff around him is collapsing and is knocking him on the back of the neck. And it looks like he's going to just be overwhelmed at this point. When Ida shows up.
This is my favorite moment in maybe like the last like couple months of this series, that he just shows up, kicks this dude's face right the fuck off, and it's just like boosh, just keeps going.
It's a really cool movement shot because you just see like the effects of him knocking Honenuki in the head, and then him actually appearing is him in his follow-through motion where he's like 30 feet further forward and has landed in front of Todoroki. So Ida's like, oh, crap. All right. I better get Todoroki out of here. And Tetsu's really pissed off about this because like, hey, don't run away. But Ida flashes back to way back when he was in the alley during the Stain fight, and he just remembers what he learned from that experience. And he just says, take this to heart, villains. The rescue takes top priority. And so he's going to take Todoroki to safety instead of trying to fight the two of them off right here. See, this has probably been my least favorite of the three fights we've gotten so far overall, but I do think that he has had some standout moments in it, and I do appreciate that. You know, the two important characters this time were Todoroki, I must make myself really hot, and Ida, these are the lessons that I have learned over the course of dozens of chapters. So, there you go. Honenuki realizes, because even though Ida is running away, he's been knocked in the back of the head, and it really fucking hurt. Like, his helmet's completely split in half. So he has to do something. So he reaches over to this column next to him and starts to use his powers on it. And he starts to melt it. And then he shouts out to Tetsu to push it down. And so with it softened, Tetsu can push it over, and it collapses and chases down Ida while he's running away. And then everyone falls down. And the chapter ends with the four fighters there just all knocked out, unconscious on the ground. So,
I'm guessing it's a tie then? I mean, I don't know. The next chapter could be like, I don't know, Soji walks over, he's like, I'll just throw this guy in a cage and this one in a cage. I don't know.
Well, Honenuki had gone over to Ojiro and Shoji. So I'm guessing that what might happen is that Tsunotori will show up, being basically the last person standing, and they'll be able to get Class 1A in the jail. If not that, then if everyone's out of commission, then yes, it would be a tie.
I'm assuming so, because, like, even if she's still up, fucking Ida's buried underneath a column of like mud and steel. So I'm like, could she even get him out of that?
Well, it's soft.
Is there a time limit for this that's supposed to exist?
I don't think that they've established what causes Honinuki's powers to be disabled. I don't know if it's knocking him out or what. I don't think that they've actually established that. He can disable it at will, but I don't know if something can happen to cause it to just go back to normal. Probably it does with time. Maybe we'll find out.
Perhaps.
Also, I had completely missed the connection that Honinuki was the guy in Class 1B who had the exposed teeth, because he's just been wearing his helmet this whole time. So I just completely missed that until now. Anyway, that's the chapter of My Hero Academia. Presumably this means we're going to get into the fourth match, which is one that I'm looking forward to considerably more than this one, because
it's got your girl in it.
It does. That's Nicole. Every time that Jiro shows up, she's like, "Hey, it's your girl." I'm like, "Yes, I like her. I get it. She's my favorite character."
Well, it's like how every streamer starts up a stream nowadays. Like, it's your boy.
God, at least it's not that implication. Ugh. No, she's like my little sister. I swear. I want good things to happen for her.
Like your actual little sister's out in the rain, like banging on the door, like, Nick, let me in. You're just like, you're reading Jiro fan fiction, like, I hope this one ends with her happy.
My little sister's graduating from college soon. She can handle herself. Yeah. So that's it. Also Bakugo is going to be in that one. I feel as though it's going to be more interesting to see what happens with him as opposed to Todoroki being like, what if I do that thing my dad wanted me to do where I make my body hot? It's like, okay, it's disappointing. So, all right. Let's move on then to Food Wars, Shokugeki no Soma. This chapter actually annoyed me, Chris.
Okay.
But I mean, we'll get into it, but it's basically just like, really, Soma, you don't get how this works by now? It's chapter 287, Convenience Store Brawl. With honestly like a really weird 2-page color spread, and because it's the 4 chefs that we know of who are taking part in the blue, and they're all, posing with kitchen implements, and so the guys all look really cool because they've got a cooking knife in their hand, and then there's Megami in the background who's just got a saucepan like,
let's do this. Like, I like to think she'll get there and she'll realize the saucepan had stuff in it, and like she looks and like the ground's just littered with all of her sauce she just lost and shit. That's
a very Megami thing to do, so yeah. The current challenge that they have to do is getting ingredients from a convenience store in order to make a valuable dish. So Tsukasa and Soma have issued a challenge to each other to try and make the most valuable dish during this contest, which gets Takumi really fired up and annoyed because he's like, oh, you got the need to stare down without me, Yukihira.
Everyone's like, who are you? I'm like the 3rd seat on the council. I'm like, which one? Kurokiba?
Tsukasa has a bunch of reporters just suddenly show up and start trying to interview him. Also, Ohizumi, the old bald judge that we've seen a bunch of times, is there too. And yeah, I don't know exactly why he's there, but because Soma's like, okay, there's a bunch of reporters here, and they're like, yes, of course, we are staunch supporters of the traditional culinary world. We don't want to see the blue won by Noir. And Ohizumi says, and all the promising young chefs participating this year, the one most likely to stop them is Eiichi Tsukasa. Okay, but why are you here? You're not a reporter.
I guess just any judge from... Are judges administered by the WGO?
Assume so.
Okay, so maybe it's just like the WGO's here, so he's here kind of thing.
Not all of them, because like Azumi took over the... Azami, sorry. took over the judge's table during the whatever.
Well, that's because it was his school, and that's
his
thing. He big dicked his way onto the table.
Also, here are these two girls who I may or may not have a sexual relationship with. They'll definitely be neutral.
Oh, it is 100% not a I may or may not be having.
So, everyone, of course, is taking notice of Tsukasa, and Ohizumi's like, "Oh, and you three, yeah, we've got high expectations for you too." It's like, thanks. So everyone goes into the convenience store. They look at the ingredients and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, they've got actually pretty, average ingredients." And so someone's like, "I get it. Using only a bunch of everyday ingredients, they're testing us on how fresh and exciting a dish we can make." Okay. So he just grabs a whole bunch of stuff and whips up a dish immediately. And Takumi's like, "Aren't you gonna think through this stuff?" And he's like, "All right, using this stuff and this stuff, instant canned beef sukiyaki." Bah! And he goes up to the not Alice girl who was serving as the judge. I was like, was there Ranbaru, I think was her name?
Who cares?
Something like that. So he's like, "Okay, yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Negative $14.
I fucking actually love that. And she's like, "Give me your wallet."
And someone does, and she's like, "Oh, there's only yen in here." Well, I guess it's fine. And someone's like, "How is my dish worth negative $14? And she's like, "Well, because you didn't have the first clue what this trial was about and wasted a ton of ingredients. So if you're gonna do that, you need to pay what you used." And so someone's like, "Oh, I guess the ingredients that I used cost $14, which means that she's saying that I added absolutely nothing to this dish. I merely cooked up a bunch of ingredients for no purpose whatsoever." And so she says, like, "Yeah, I can understand why you've got 3 chances to do this, so you could do a trial run. But come on, our funding isn't bottomless, And so we're just like, you set up a freaking convenience store in the middle of nowhere just for this contest."
Also, we find out later on that she just hands out 587. Like, it's not like
is almost literally made of money.
They say, like, yeah, you need $100 to actually buy your way through the next gate, but they literally hand Tsukasa $587 afterwards, with, I guess, the notion being like, "You keep the rest."
Her explanation for why Soma, this dish failed is, "Your dish was nothing more than the sum of its parts. That's plain addition." So Tsukasa's like, "I hope this meets with your approval," and puts down this bacon-wrapped, wonderful-looking thing. Everyone's like, "Ah!" And so she's like, yeah. And she digs into it, like, "Ah!" Clothes blow off everywhere. And then, there is an explanation for why the dish is good.
Nick, with the bottom layers meatloaf and hollandaise sauce and mushrooms.
It does look fucking delicious. I don't care, though. I'm not going to explain why it's delicious because I don't know cooking. So everyone's like, "Oh my God, average foods with completely average flavors. Use them as they are and you'll never pass this trial." And out of all of them, he singled out the ones that could stand up to haute cuisine cooking, melding them together into a harmonious whole that brought out their best qualities while eliminating anything inferior. It's a level of quality only someone of Eishi Tsukasa's level could reach. And so like, "Oh my God, it's amazing." And then, she lays down, like, positive $587. Boom. Then she's like, "Oh, hey, so if you're doing like family restaurant kind of stuff, then there's no way you're going to have a dish that's worth like $100, because Soma flat out admitted to her, it was like, "Oh yeah, I would never sell the dish that I made for, $100, 10,000 yen. It would be like, no, 1,000 yen at most." And she's like, "Wow, okay, you've got like no shame whatsoever about that. So yeah, good luck making a dish that's worth that amount when all you do is make, cheap cooking kind of stuff." So I guess the idea is that Soma's, at a disadvantage because of the type of, stuff he specializes in. So how do you make a dish that's worth a whole ton of money when it's like, well, no, the stuff that I make a menu for is worth like $10. The quality of the dish may be really high, but it's like, okay, but if it's monetary value, whatever. But then he's like, "Okay, I've got the perfect dish for this, the pride of Yukihira, and it'll make anyone plunk down more than one big bill." It's like, okay, I get it. But Soma, how is, like, your dish was apparently tasty, but it's like, why did you decide to just take it easy, basically? It really seems like he just slacked off, honestly.
Yeah, after the last contest where like the thing first came up and he was like, hold on, something's fishy about this. Although to be fair, he didn't actually realize what the goal of that either was, so maybe it's just trying to say Soma's going into this with a weird perspective.
Yeah, but I know that the implication is like he specifically approached it in such a way, but because of the dismissive attitude that she takes towards it, and the realization that Soma comes to, which is just like, all I did was just cook some ingredients. It's like, so you didn't actually make a good dish? Like, you've beaten this guy before, not in a straight up one-on-one contest, but he outclassed you by literally an infinite amount when you think about it. Because if he added no value to the dish and Tsukasa added $587, it was like, okay, so then you suck, Soma. Or he just, it seems like you just took a very lackadaisical approach to it, which Soma has done before. Like, I'm reminded of the breakfast thing that they had to do where he was just like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. And then he had to really rally in order to do it. But it seems like he just slacked off in this case. So, I don't know. Imagine if he hadn't had a second chance at it, Chris.
Yeah, I guess that's there to put that there. So, like, hey, if you
no, you failed because you didn't care. It's like the people in the first contest didn't get second chances.
They're like, well, shit. What are you gonna do about that? I don't know.
All
right. Let's move on to Eden Zero, Chapter 20, The Planet Gilst. And our cover page is, I forget her name, and I don't care.
All right.
Is taking a selfie. So,
which is really weird, actually, because like it's a selfie, but you can see the phone.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's someone taking a picture of her taking a selfie.
Because she's making eye contact through the panel. She's not looking at the phone that she's taking a selfie with.
Yeah. I don't know. Stupid. So we're on Planet Gilst in the Liga Tower, and it's all the beekeeper women are locked in a room. We had that whole thing last week where like Rebecca was like, "We're such intelligent, powerful women. There's no way we can't figure out a way out of this," and they didn't figure out a way out of this. Apparently, well, find out.
Let's see here. So we see that among the women we see, there are two women crying. The tattooed girl from the previous one who was like, "There's no way we can get out of this," is just like lying down, bored, I guess resigned to her fate. The larger woman is staring into space, and the little girl is going,
hanging on the door.
It's not working, guys! It turns out doing a bunch of videos where we open boxes did not train us to escape this facility.
That would be great. It's like they all go in, they're like, I know how to make title cards. I know how to open boxes. I know how to do viewer requests. And they're like, what if we put all these skills together and then make a really good B-Cube video and nothing else? And that's it.
And they're like, okay, guys, it's time for us to get out of here. Now remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon.
They're like, you know what? Your support really goes a long way, helps us get out of this illegal sex dungeon we're in. Without your help, we might be furniture forever, everybody. So Liga shows up, and he's like, hello, ladies. And I wanted the Val Venus music to come on, but it doesn't, unfortunately. So you had to add that in yourself.
Sorry, I can't make that noise with my mouth.
So the beekeeper lady's like, what do you want with us? And he's like, ooh, I know all of you. I've seen all of you guys. And he's like, no, the one tattoo girl's like, don't just tell me you're like a creepy fan who's taking this too far. He's like, oh, I'm not a big fan. I just take any girls who are cute. I like to turn girls into furniture. And this time I want to use it with beekeepers. And Rebecca's like, furniture? I don't know. So no one can grasp what he's talking about. They're like, oh, don't they have furniture on Blue Garden? And they're like, maybe no one's familiar with your weird kink, sir. So they give us a demonstration. We see a woman who's naked, and she's kneeling down. And he's like, I just happened to make some furniture in the next room. This girl is a superstar from some planet or another, and she's begging for her worthless life, as the mutants in Fallout 4 would say. And she's begging, and I forget which one. I don't know if we actually seen this guy before. It's like the butler just hits her with like a ray gun, and she turns to stone. And he's like, there, now I have a new chair. And I'm like, look, not for nothing, bro. You look pretty big. It's like, I feel like she might, like, her waist was pretty thin in the middle. That seems like a structural integrity problem. You're going to sit in that chair, it's going to break. And then you're going to have to buy a new chair. Well,
no, that's why he's constantly kidnapping women, Chris.
He's like, why can't I find a woman meant for the hefty man to sit on for eternity?
Why did you give me this 12-year-old? Come on.
That'd be great if he was really... He's like, I can't use this. What, are you going to be an end table? You got to prop up one of the legs to my fucking table? This was worthless.
I guess I could use it as like a bookend.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I need to put toilet paper on something.
Wait, if I'm going to use you as a bookend, I need a second one of you.
Guys, get me another 12-year-old little girl famous BuCuber. So they're like, yeah, please spare us. And he's like, why would I ever spare you? And he snaps his fingers and the room starts filling with bubbles. And they go, oh no, what kind of thing is it? It's clothes eating bubbles. It's the thing. They're bubbles that just eat clothes and it melts off all their clothes. They're like, what are you doing, you creepies? Like, I'm cleaning up my furniture. Yeah, Rebecca sitting there as her clothes are all melting off is like, I'm going to get out of here. And we cut away. Like, all right, fair enough. So they arrive on Aliga, and they specifically use the fucking what's the cantina? Mos Eisley. They use the Mos Eisley quote when they're like, "This planet is a hive of scum and villainy."
Hold on. You've skipped ahead a little bit here. So there's a point where they've arrived at the planet Gilst, and then what's her face robot girl says, a search for Jin, Gilst, Wind, Ether Gear brings up a mercenary squad called Rogue Out. So it's good to know that Google's good for that kind of thing.
Yeah, you could just look up mercenary groups throughout the galaxy on there. And we also get another joke with Samurai Girl where she's like, let us head there first. I feel it would be appropriate now to say that I'm looking forward to seeing their strong warriors. And I'm like, I feel like this joke would be better if she was just super stoic and didn't care that she was saying it, as opposed to like this weird notion that it's like, she's like, well, I don't want to say that, but this is my actual thoughts. And then we get the Star Wars quote. I know Homura is her name. I don't care what her name is. She's a very irrelevant character. Actually, I want to touch
She's never going to be a important character.
I want to touch on this now. Who the fuck is Homura? She's just shown up in this arc as a character. Like,
she wants to challenge the Demon King, Chris.
Like, she just walked into the scene at one point and she's like, I am a character now. You're like, do you know anybody? No.
The rate at which characters are being introduced, it's not like they just have the guild on the ship so they can just have people randomly show up, Chris. People actually have to, specifically join them if they're going to go places.
Yeah.
You can't just say like, oh yeah, that's Levy's sidekicks,
Oh yeah, that'd be the best part. Or if she had just been a member of the guild, it would have made sense then. It's just like weird. She's just like, I know nobody except I want to go after the Demon King. Take me with you. This random stranger I just met, and it worked. So we actually get an image for. Oh, sorry, I should real quick mention. Weiss also fixes up Happy.
Yes.
There you go. But he can't fix him, like he can't wake him up because he's not skilled enough to do that yet. But he's like, we'll get him functioning. I'm going to fix him. So we see Gilst in like a full page spread. And it's kind of cool. It's like a giant tree planet with like cities kind of on like stilts connected to the tree. It feels very structurally unsafe, but still kind of cool visually. And they talk about how it's good with wood ether. It's filled with like a good wealth of wood ether. And I know, like, subconsciously I always knew, but this was the moment I was like, God damn it, ether's just fucking magic reflavored for another god. This is just fairy tale in space, cocksucker. So they talked about it, and like they're like, yeah, this is a really impressive thing. And then Shiki gets sad, and like, why are you sad? He's like, I just thought Rebecca and Happy would love to see us, and they'd be like, this will make a great video. And They're like, yeah, we'll get them.
We could go kill some goblins.
Yeah, like Goblins.
That's their character trait.
That'd be great if Goblins.
They like making videos.
If Goblin Slayer showed up and they're like, we could use your help saving this group of women who have been kidnapped and are going to be sold to be furniture objects for the rest of their life. And he's like, are there goblins involved? They're like, well, no. And he's already gone. They're like, no, but so many women, even children, are involved in this giant child sex trafficking ring. And he's just like, goodbye. Let me know when there are goblins.
My point is that it's just, a hero has that kind of habit of like, this is my character's one quirk. So.
Oh, yeah. Remember, Nick, how Lucy was a reporter? She was a journalist?
No, I don't. Because she ended up, surprisingly enough, growing beyond that.
So they get to this church where Rogue Out apparently hangs out because they write their name on the front of the church. They're very subtle about that. They write their name on the front of the church because they're very subtle and very secretive. So they get inside and it's a giant church with this huge memorial up there. And sorry, I had to laugh because the characters are there. They're like, a church. Are you sure this is it? Well, it does say Rogue Out on the it does say the name of the gang on the sign.
You imagine like they were like walking outside the streets like, we have to find the hideout for Rogue Out. All right. Well, how are we going to tell what that is? Well, they should have marked it with their gang symbol. What does the symbol look like? It's Rogue Out.
If someone was like, do you think they're in that place? No, that seems too suspicious. Let's check out the KFC from 5 blocks ago and see if they're hiding out in there or something. Let's check every unnamed building. So they get inside.
Look, I'm really hungry.
They get inside and there's a giant statue that starts talking to them. And it's just like, what do ye seek here? Power? Money? Other desires? Or have ye come to confess your sins and make penance? No, I need not hear your answer. And the statue opens up and there's a woman inside like the base of it. And she's
Pay
like,
no heed to that woman inside the statue.
I'm glad they spent the time with the elaborate statue thing first. And then they're like, hold on, I'm just going to open up and I'll show you that inside. And she's like, I already know you. Shiki's like, who are you? And she's like, I am Sister, the leader of Rogue Out. Bum, 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 bum.
Bum.
Okay,
I do like her design, admittedly.
Kind of like the nun habit sort of look.
But no, the weird like robotic looking thing coming out of her back, like it's like a shell or something.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that is.
So this series continues to be stupid. Yeah.
Stupid and weird.
Yeah,
I love that. I'm trying to think. There definitely had to have been at some point. I'm trying to remember the fairy tale situation where they ran into a thing that like ate clothes. Because there was specifically the dude in Rave Master whose Ravestone was like, my breath destroys clothes. And then there's the bubble clothes destroyer, and there must be something else as well.
It's just like Hero's calling card.
Yeah, like it's not a hero series if you don't get one of those. Like, all the MCU movies in Phase 2 had like a hand getting cut off, and that was kind of like a quiet thing between the movies. It was like a missing arm. That's what they do in this one. Like that in Fairy Tail universe. Like every hero series needs something about a clothes destroying power at some point.
Yes. Oh,
that's right. There was a dude who destroyed clothes, and he was defeated because he was
What?
I forgot about that. The one assassin who was like, I can kill you. And I can't see women nude. That was like his weakness.
Yeah. Well, then there was the other member. There was Di Maria, who would cut the clothes off of her opponents just to, humiliate them. So.
Oh, God. I love fucking heroes. Bullshit.
Yeah. So, let's move on from there. Dr. Stone. No, wait. No, it's We Never Learn. I got confused because we usually switch off. But yeah, there's nothing in between this week.
We
We never learn.
Question 87. The Star of Ultimate Love in the Name of X Part 3. So last time, Fumino's dad showed up as they were taking all of her stuff and heading home, but they hid inside like a cabinet so that they wouldn't see him. And there's a very the weird moment when Eureka is just like, what is she doing? Why does she smell so good? And the dad's like, I wonder what's here in this box. Perhaps I'll open it. And then he gets like the very convenient phone call. It's like, what? No, I must leave immediately.
I can't open this cabinet? All right, bye.
Is that my one direction? Oh, I must also leave the house as well. That is fair. So they leave.
It's just like Fumino texting on him and on his phone. He's like, well, I guess I will just follow this order that I randomly received.
Leave the house. Don't look in the cabinet. Come back in an hour.
Leave $2,000 for Fumino.
Well, I don't normally follow anonymous texts on my phone, but this one time will be the one time. So they get out of the cabinet because the dad leaves, and Fumino found it looks like a laptop. Sorry, it is a laptop. I don't know why. For some reason, I thought there was a photo album involved this week, so I wasn't sure. Yeah, it's a laptop. And they're like, oh, it's a very important laptop because she can remember having it snatched from her dad. And they're like, no, that's your mother's, and it contains crucial research that could alter the field of mathematics.
Also, all of my porn.
Yeah, all my porn's on there. You can't touch it.
It's just like a 16 terabyte folder that's labeled Furahashi's notes.
So one of my friends works IT somewhere, and they were getting reports about like a signal coming off. Like they're like, hey, someone's doing something with their laptop they shouldn't. So he like logged, basically like screen they got in so he was able to see what they were doing. And you noticed on the desktop there's one folder called cringe do not look, and he's like, all right, well, I have to. So he disabled all their controls and like went in, and it's like pictures of like a sexy Pikachu guy being like, oh, why don't you see my Pokeball? It's like a guy in fishnet garters. You're like, why would you name this folder like that? Why wouldn't you at least call it like homework or something like vacation photos?
Bread recipe.
Bread recipe, perfect. So they go and they open up the laptop and they're like, hey, there's one folder on it, but it requires a password to open. And it's one of those laptops where they're like, you've entered a password too many times. You won't just be locked out. We'll delete everything forever if you enter in the password incorrectly one more time. You're like, I don't think computers do this outside of like the government, but
very, very high security documents, you would want to do that. But I don't know if a mathematical researcher would do that kind of thing.
It's, I suppose, possible.
It's possible.
There is a lot of money in like adding to mathematics.
Sure.
But it's
as established in the previous chapter. Sure.
It's a strange thing to have it like introduced here. It's like, here's our family laptop. It has one folder on it. If we enter it wrong again, it'll delete everything forever. Like, okay.
Yep.
So they note that they're like, oh man, and they know like Fumino thinks, oh yeah, it's kind of sad. I feel kind of bad for my dad because he's been trying to. He wants to get into this folder, but he doesn't know her password.
Password 1. Password 2.
But then she immediately is like, no, fuck him. I don't care. Fuck that dude. He deserves it. And then we cut over back to the house, and she's working. She's putting her heart and soul into it so she could succeed at her goals without her dad. And
look, I cooked your food for you.
Yuega's mom shows up and is like, hey, me and the younger siblings are all going to be leaving for the weekend, so it's just going to be you and Yuega. So, just giving you a heads up on that. So Fumino decides to pay him back by being like the good kind of like housemate. So she's like, I'll make your food and I'll clean up. And of course, Fumino is fucking incapable of anything related to like being like a housewife kind of characteristic. Or a housekeeping. So she fucks up the food. And I do like this because Yuega like eats it and he's like, it's not bad. It's a bit hard and salty, but tasty. I like these scrambled eggs. And she's like, that was supposed to be sunny side up. Like, what the fuck?
Oh, sorry.
What happened? And she notes that, before becoming an astronomer was my dream. My dream was to become a happy bride. And then there's like an awkward moment where she's like, I didn't mean you were a bride. And then there's like a series of errors that continue as like she tries to make something. Well, she tries to just fucking sweep and she puts a hole in the wall.
You're like it's a spear on the end of the broom.
like there was a 12-pound weight attached to the end of it that she didn't realize. Like, I don't know how you just casually end up poking something through a wall like that. Then something overheats in the pot. And she makes food that's really gross again. And I don't know
you make us boxers!
I don't know what this is. She's just like, And I don't know if it's a pair of boxers or shorts, but she's like, And it's flying away. So there's just a moment where Uega gets in the bath, and he's like, man, this has been a crazy day. And
thankfully, I've got these incredibly developed pecs.
I always forget that he's stupidly ripped for some reason. Then Firmino comes in and she's like, hey, I'm going to like help you bathe. Like I'm all set to get wet, as she says.
It's honestly really creepy.
But it's fine because she's like, neither of them are actually naked when they get to it. She's just like, hey, I'm going to help you out here because I can't apparently do anything else. Like, I'm shocked she didn't try to like wash his back and she ends up ripping the skin off. She's like,
oh no.
I used acid. You're supposed to use acid to get off the dirt, right? And she thinks back to like when she was a little kid doing it with her dad, like helping her dad wash his back and things like that. So Uega's like, hey, don't be too hard on yourself about your dad, right? I know it's hard for you leaving things unresolved. And I'm the one who invited you, so I know it's kind of weird, but I think it'd be better if you talk to him a little bit. She's like, no! I've spent 10 years leaving things unresolved. At this point, there's nothing to say. Nothing at all. And then she kind of like falls asleep on his back. She's very tired. I guess she got very exhausted washing his back and just passes out onto his back.
Oh my God, it's so difficult.
And they put her in bed. Then she wakes up. She's like, oh no. And she's like, I had to study. And he's like, no, I think you should rest a bit more. She's like, no, I have to study. He's like, Farina, would you go on a date with me? And I kind of like this idea that he's just like, bitch, you need chill. you need to fucking take some time and fucking relax.
Well, if he's trying to get her to relax, then he's putting that sentence in a rather like stressing way. So,
well, that's just how this series works.
Yeah, basically, yes.
But I don't know. I'm just the notion of like, I know I've left things so unresolved. And she falls asleep on his back. I'm like, how does that happen?
Of all the different ways you can fall asleep, I don't know if like while actively physically doing something like as monotonous, well, not as monotonous as that, but like, you'd think that she would be on like pins and needles doing that. And yeah, like of all the different situations I've seen of someone falling asleep in the middle of doing something, that one's like, are you really? Okay.
How does this function? Like, you were just in the middle of washing the back and you were just like, oh, so tired talking about my dad and my childhood drama. In this room that's full of water and suds is very slippery. And I mean, it's kind of like a weird situation that we're both in right now. I feel like there's a little bit that would keep us awake with just adrenaline or hormones or something, whatever.
Oh man, I'm in the middle of this marathon. And, oh man, it's just like, I don't know if I can.
Also, I understand his family maybe wasn't home at that moment. But
right.
Doesn't it seem weird to leave her sleeping in a bathing suit? Isn't that supposed to be super dangerous? I think if it's a wet bathing suit to sleep in it.
She's going to get pneumonia.
Mm-hmm. Now kill her. Just like it killed everyone in Dr. Stone, Nick.
Yeah.
That was me throwing it to Dr. Stone.
I'm just shocked at how well that worked out. Dr. Stone, Chris. It's chapter Z equals 82, epilogue of Stone Wars, end of part 2. Last time, through the combined efforts of Tsukasa and Senku was able to stick Hyoga with some wires hooked up to batteries around his chest, which create a taser, basically. And so this causes Hyoga to be briefly knocked out while he shouts out, "Ah, freaking science bit!" They also established that Senku actually got the batteries from this from the cell phone that they had tossed out at them at the beginning of the battle. So nice continuity there. And we get a brief little montage. Homura shows up at the scene of the fight just in time to see Hyoga fall down. She tries to attack Senku, but everyone is right behind her. All of the fighters from the Kingdom of Science show up and disable her. Kohaku pins her down. They tie her up. We get a little bit of catch up with Kinro, who sees that Senku's got a hole in his shirt that was from when the batteries blocked the spear, and he actually thanks Kinro because the training that they did to test the paper shield with the spear actually let him get used to being stabbed with a spear a little bit. So a cool little detail there. So Hyoga and Homura are tied up now. And Magma's like, "Let's kill him," and Taiju's like, "No, killing people is just plain wrong.
You shouldn't kill people." I guess I don't know what Taiju's long-term solution to criminals is. Arm wrestle them forever.
People die when they are killed, so killing people's bad. But Chrome says, like, well, that actually raises a point. Like, how long should we, like, just keep them in prison? And Senku says, until we get civilization up and running. And then when they do that, then, Hyoga won't be able to be in danger. They can put him on trial, whatever. I don't care. That's for them to figure out. That's future Senku's problem. So Kohaku says, like, we did it. It's finally over. But Senku says, no, you've got it backwards. We're finally getting started. Now, with everyone's help, we're going to start from square one. Here in this stone world, we'll build a true kingdom of science. It's a kingdom of science.
That would be like a kingdom...
Line.
Yeah, he's like, a kingdom of women used as furniture. And they're like, wait, what? He's like, oh, yeah, I mean, not on the king of the kingdom of science side to like work a couple of kinks in. And this is actually the story of how a Liga started.
What you don't understand is that he didn't always used to be frog-shaped.
Mm-hmm. He used to be a boy, but then he started to change as he grows. And Frog's like, hey, we're not cool with this characterization, the Frog Union.
There is one last loose end to tie up, of course, and that is that, Yo was the one who set Homura free, and he's still, running around. But he's kind of observing stuff in the background as basically a little bit of time has passed, and we see Yuzuriha working together with Suika to put together a statue so that they can put them together. Gen, for example, expresses some doubts, like, I don't know if we can actually, I don't know if this is going to work. Or Kohaku says she doesn't know it's going to work. And Gen says, well, as long as the cross sections in a roadway, that's dear Senku's hypothesis that should work. So this is one of the ones that was, really, really broken up and shattered, that they're seeing if it'll work now. And they pour the miracle fluid on it. And yeah, it works. The guy comes back to life. And he's like a salaryman who is still in mid typing as he comes back. He's like, oh no, it's not a salaryman. Sorry. He's a manga artist.
He's a manga man.
He's like, oh no, my draft is due.
How long have I been sleeping? 2,000 years. I'm super late.
I'm going to write 10,000 chapters immediately. And Gen's like, yes, manga can be brought back now. Hooray!
I love that they have it again. He's like, remember Senku promised to bring back the fun of civilization and of science. And it's like a shot of Goku right behind him. Like, and he's just like, I fucking love how stupid this series is at times.
Also a T-Rex. So Yo basically just watching from the bushes there was like, yeah, manga! And he's like, fuck it, sounds awesome. Hey, so I fell in a waterfall and I've had amnesia until yesterday. So I'm a good person now.
And I love that, like, they immediately are like, oh, well, but there's so much work to go around for everybody, so come on in. And he's like, cool, so I'm forgiven for my crimes? Like, out loud, it's like, so no one will care all the things I did?
Oh, I definitely don't remember those things that I supposedly did. Oh, I guess I'm forgiven, so... It's like Chang from Community. But I do love that Yuzuriha, the most like innocent, hardworking, dedicated, goes along with all of Senku's bad stuff. People in the manga is just like, oh, well, there's a lot of work that he could help with. There's a lot of statues to be put together. I'll lead him there. And she just stands in front of this massive pile of statues. And, oh my God! And she's like, you'll help me with this, right? You mean we've got to put all these together, every last one? Yeah! Isn't it exciting?
And her eyes are like rolled back and dying.
I've been doing this all by myself for months.
She's like, doesn't this seem super exciting? Putting together old men's stone dicks so they don't die and explode when they come back? Isn't it fun?
Yuzuri has really ascended up my list of favorite characters in this series now because of this. It's like, oh God, this poor girl. And then we get some very dramatic stuff happening. I cut over from that because Tsukasa is basically at death's door. He's got Ukyo and Taiju and oh gosh, I've forgotten his name briefly.
Ukyo?
Kaseki.
Oh, Kaseki.
Yeah, all looking after him. Because Kaseki's trying to say like, oh, you need your rest, and Tsukasa says, no. The kingdom of science is one, and the statues that I broke with my own two hands have turned out to be meaningless sacrifices. And Taiju's like, we'll find everyone. We'll find every piece. You just tell us where they are. And we see, he and Magma rushing around, gathering pieces, bringing them back to Yuzuriha and Yo to put together. And Ukyo says while he's there in the cave, do you really remember the locations of every statue you broke? And Tsukasa says, of course. Not for a single moment have I forgotten. Showing more of like the type of person that Tsukasa really is. He understands the weight of actually taking a life. So, over time, the Kingdom of Science contacts the main village with the good news that everyone's okay. And they're like, oh, so nobody died? And Chrome starts to say, is like, oh yeah, everyone from the village survived. I mean, no, nobody died. Nobody at all. It's victory without sacrifice. Senku won't let him die. And we see Senku working a bit with Gen, doing some chemical stuff. Medicine, yay. And so Gen says, like, so is this going to save Tsukasa? And Senku, doesn't really say anything until for a bit, he just says, like, well, sealing up the wound only prolongs the inevitable. It's not a magic spell that'll heal his busted organs. We cut over to the jail cell, which is, basically a reinforced version of the cells that Tsukasa's kingdom had before with, like, metal bars and stuff. And Hyoga and Homura are in cages facing each other. And Homura's just like, this isn't so bad. I'm with Hyoga.
This works out pretty well.
Also, I've got freaking ramen. Sweet.
Yeah, a giant leg of meat, too. It's like, it's actually pretty sweet.
Man, prison system in the Stone Age is pretty good.
They're like, free healthcare? Why doesn't everybody just go to prison?
Isn't this great? Hyoga's the fuck everything. He's like, oh, yeah. Kohaku is basically the warden. She's serving them their meals. And Hyoga's like, how naive and foolish you are. Why do you refuse to execute someone who killed his commander with that weak thinking your community won't last long? And Kohaku's like, you think Tsukasa's gonna die? Don't be absurd! Ordinary people are always holding out hope for miracles. And Kohaku's like, yes, the perfect setup for this speech I had planned. Miracles? Not Senku, not even for a second. The path of science leads him where he needs to go, little by little, one painstaking step at a time. In this world, there's nobody stronger or more hardworking than him. And
Now,
We see
I
Senku
want to know,
has come to a solution.
Has this been something they've done before? It's the first time I noticed that Kohaku's shield has the Kingdom of Science sigil on it now.
I think that's a new thing.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that's always been there and I just haven't noticed it, or if that was something new that now they're the Kingdom of Science and actually, like, they're branding.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that they actually introduced the symbol of science until, like, just now, so...
Well, they had the flag for a while.
Oh, I guess it's true. Was that the same flag that he had when he said goodbye to Yuzuriha and Taiju?
I think so.
Okay.
Like the spaceship with stars.
Gotcha. I don't know if it's been a thing for a while. Maybe it happened when he actually, became the king. So Senku approaches Tsukasa. He's got a few fragments of stone in his grip, and he says, "There's one way to save you. We're gonna petrify you again. The diabolical flash of light that nearly ended humanity, we'll use it for ourselves. Science will tell us what caused the petrification, and then that power will be ours. Get excited." And he crushes the stones in his grasp. We get the introduction for the part 3 of the series, which is Dr. Stone. It's Dr. Stone part 3, Dr. Stone.
I hope like part 4 comes around. It's like Dr. Story part 4, Stone of Doctor.
Dr. Stone part 5, Stone to Dr. Stone.
Period. Stone. Doctor.
I really like this way of approaching things. It allows Senku to, maintain the approach of victory without killing anyone. But also, if they just save, Tsukasa's life and that's it, was like, well, that's going to make a lot of things really easy to have him on your side. So this is a good way of kind of having your cake and eating it too. It's like he's so badly injured that they have to find a way to save his life. And then once they do, it'll basically be to Mr. Freeze's wife him. So that's a good way of putting him on the shelf for a little bit. Yeah. Give him the kind of Fuego Leon treatment. And
they kind of have to. He's such a powerful character that, like, if you try to put any physical threat in front of Senku, it's going to be impossible to think. Like, this is a dude who's like, oh, I kill lions with my hands. Like,
yeah.
You need something to to put out of the commission the strongest dude. So, and it also adds some stakes to this. Like we now have come to like Tsukasa a bit more as well. So you're like, I kind of hope he gets to live and actually spends time with his little sister and everything. So
yeah. I am curious though, because with Hyoga defeated, then that's all the antagonists that were brought up and these, past 2 parts just, taken care of seemingly, even if it's a temporary thing. So you've got to think it's there's got to be something else that's on the horizon that'll, because there have been plenty of things that are just just the world in general is just dangerous. But there's always been that lurking thread of there is a timeline, there is, an imposing thing happening that is going to eventually force an eventual confrontation. And there's nothing like that going on right now. So you got things maybe a new antagonist is going to get introduced at some point. Mm-hmm. Also, should mention, by the way, that we've received word that apparently a Dr. Stone anime has been greenlit. So,
congratulations! I hope Inagaki gets to enjoy another good anime series, and maybe one that's not as mid as ISO 21's anime.
You mean I think that what you mean is gets to enjoy an actually good anime series.
All right, let's move on to 2 chapters of 7 Deadly Sins, because there wasn't one published by Crunchyroll last week, so they did 2. So we have 2 to talk about, starting with chapter 288, Operation God. And we get kind of an interesting cover page where it shows each of the characters, and I don't know if it's deliberate, but it kind of looks a little bit like they're sized kind of proportionate to how important they are to all this. So we get names for everyone, the dozing god of death, the head of the archangels, all that sort of stuff. It's kind of cool. So last time, Ludashell was finally made to be like, all right, fine, I'll stop trying.
Fine, I'll work with you.
I'll stop trying to charge directly into it, and was preparing to work together with Escanar. So they go, and they're going to go in for this big attack. So he lets go of Ludashell, Escanar does, and then he throws a big attack, Cruel Sun, and it blows up the ground. There's a bunch of rocks everywhere, and they're like, ha, now he won't be able to counterattack because there's too many rocks for his visibility to be blocked. And they attack, and he blocks both attacks and knocks them both away. And they're like, what the fuck? How does he do this? This is nonsense. He's like, you're wasting my time. Now it's time to get serious. And the velocity of the suction has doubled, and Merlin gets sucked in, and she doesn't have time to teleport. So she's about to get cut when Escanar leaps in, grabs her, and takes the blow for her. And she apologizes, she says Escanar, he apologizes and says, I was only following my heart. And Merlin's like, okay. So he shoots.
Well, I should note, he sees that she is also wounded. There's like a nick in her shoulder, and he's like,
he sees that, and then I don't even know, he just radiates fireballs from him, essentially, and they start going everywhere. And I like Ludachel's like, what the fuck, dude? You're trying to kill me too? But Ludachel
has gotten a lot more likable during this fight, with her getting knocked around a lot.
When you just make her a joke for a while, it's just like, I'm all aboard now. But because of this attack, Merlin is able to see what's happening, and she's like, something so simple yet heinous has nothing to do with this field of vision, his hearing, or even sensing our presence. And she explains everything about him. Essentially, his stuff is automatic at this point. His power is so strong, it's just raging around him, so nothing's going to get past him. That's his quote-unquote full react. So that's why blocking his visibility didn't matter, because it doesn't use visibility, everything like that. So, like, shit, this dude's super strong. And Ludachel, because this chick can't not get this, dude. Like, cannot figure
this out. If I just attack him really fast!
So she almost gets fucking got, but then Gil Thunder leaps into the way and takes the blow. And then it's just Merlin and sort of like Escanar for a little bit. So he's like, well, just bear it for 1 minute. She's like, okay, I won't mess up. So she does her big combination thing, and she's teleporting again. And Escanar approaches then, and he's everyone's like, what? He's not affected by the ominous nebula and is walking towards him willingly? And Zeldris has this little thing. He's like, whether it's Melodius or Estarossa, it seems that you and your brothers are pretty hell-bent on getting beat up by me. And Escanar's like, time's up, bitch! And he has the one active.
It's high noon, baby!
Did you watch the Overwatch trailer for Ashe?
No.
I find it amusing. She's the new character they're introducing.
Yeah.
I find it amusing because it's basically actually a McCree trailer.
Right.
In it. I was like, this seems odd. Isn't she the new character? It's very amusing. So yeah, he activates the one, and this is then moving into chapter 289, Pride versus Piety. So going in, he's got the one. He's as strong as ever. This is basically the strongest character. This is the kind of person that managed to defeat Melodius at one point. Mm-hmm. So Zeldris is even like, if that's true, then it only means Melodius wasn't giving his all. He's so strong that he has a nasty habit of underestimating those stronger than him. And I'm different. When I'm facing off a lion or a mouse, I put him away with everything I've got.
He says a lion or a louse, actually.
Nice. Great quality control.
Whether I'm facing off against a lion or a house.
A lion or a spouse. So I love this because Escanar's like, cute, and it slaps the shit out of him, but it doesn't work. So actually he is pretty strong. And like Zeldris, like, I don't know who. There's a lot of people who just comment on stuff, and you don't know who's directly saying it. But someone's like, he repelled an attack from Escanar while he's under influence of the one. It can't be. All that it amounted to was a scratch. And we see Escanar looks at his axe. He's like, fuck this. He flings it. He's like, and he just starts using his hand instead. He uses the holy sword of Escanar, which is just his hand, and he starts slicing down. And they're like, wow, that's fucking crazy. And that's when Chandler starts. He's like, that's Grace. That's the Archangel males, the sun. So Cusack, who I finally now learned his name because enough people have told me. Cusack's like, then you know what this means, Chandler. And he's like, yes. So we're going to see something there. And we just see Escanar is still like coming down with this hand. And Zeldris is just like, you don't get it. This is an ancient and fated battle between demons and goddesses. What reason does a human like you have to risk your life in this fight? Fuck your shit! He's still like, he actually says he's doing it for a friend.
I fight for my friends.
Yeah, and Zeldra's like, you call Melodious your friend, that cold-blooded, unfeeling guy? That man isn't capable of such frivolous feelings. And there's a flash of light, and Escanar's power is so much that he's actually nullified the Omnibus Nebula. He's just like put so much power into it that Zeldris can't put anything away. So Zeldris tries to leap away, and Escanar's like, you're not getting away. The Holy Spear of Escanar! And just like,
finger poke of doom!
Just impales him with his finger and is sending him flying, and it looks like he's about to kill him when he turns back into a normal person. He's like, and he falls. And we see that Merlin has realized what's happened. Chandler has covered the castle in darkness, thus nullifying the sun powers of Escanar and kind of putting him back to his weakest state. So there's this big explanation where, like, at that moment, Zeldris' 2 magic powers had disappeared because Escanar's one blow instantly knocked him out, forcing him to terminate. But the pierce of hell, I can't, yeah.
The Prince of Hell.
Sorry, the Prince of Hell. I don't have my glasses on. The Prince of Hell immediately came to. It took a mere 0.8 seconds, and from there, it'd take approximately 1 second for the Demon Lord to retaliate. Shink! Ludashell just fucking kills him.
Mine!
She swings in, takes him down, it looks like, and then there's a cool line where she's like, just know that in my presence, just blinking can cost you your life. So.
Cool couple of chapters. It's one of those things where it worked out with Seven Deadly Sins. That, like, yeah, there was one where they skipped a week, but hey, at least when they came out together, they worked well together. So
it was a good sequence to get back to back. And
I will say that when I saw Escanor, activating, the one, I was like, oh, this is where he just gets his shit kicked in, isn't it? Because it's one of those things where he's like, oh, it's like the strongest thing you've seen so far. Now it's time for him to get his ass kicked. Because that's how these things go. And no, he fucking destroys Zeldris, but they make it so that, it's not just a pure one-on-one fight between them. So it's, other stuff happens, and that's not it. So I really do appreciate that.
And I think the thing I ended up enjoying the most out of all this is that, like, we joked, like, Ludashell kept fucking, like, getting knocked around and being almost this comedic character. And in that moment, you've kind of forgotten about her. She just swoops into... It's like very much like that kind of thing that we love about World Trigger a lot during, like, the B-Rank Wars, where, like, a character, you're like, oh, I completely forgot that does something cool. Whereas I completely forgot about Ludashell to that moment, and then she just serves up, it's like, Zink! She's like, don't ever blink around me, bitch. And I was like, that's pretty dope.
Good couple of chapters. All right. Let's move on then to The Promised Neverland. It's chapter 111, Unwanted Guest. Amazingly, the kids that set out, Andrew found them. Emma finds out that Dominic and Alicia and whoever else went with them are gone. And they're like, oh no! They've taken their things and they're outside. We've got to go and find them and bring them back. So they rush outside of their hideout and they're like, oh, we've got to go. Oh, gunshots. We got to go. And then a kid gets shot in the fucking head. And then another gets shot in the fucking ankle. Well, okay. And Andrew shows up. He looks like Two-Face because one side of his face has just been messed up by the explosion that he survived. And he's got Alicia in his arm. And he's like, I've got a fucking hostage now. Get down on your knees or I'll kill her. So Ray and Emma and Jillian and a couple of others, they get down on their hands and knees. And they're like, oh, we've got to buy time. Well, some other people flank him and ambush him. And then he's like, I see you. Don't try anything or I'll kill them. Well, shit, nothing worked. Damn it, Zach. You're useless. And he like kicks Dominic in the spine. And so everyone's just like, fuck this. And they pick up their weapons and all point them at him. And Andrew just says, you're not going to shoot me. Right, Emma? Yeah, I know who you are. I heard about you from Phil. And they're like, what did you do with Phil? And he's like, oh. Anyway, so he just moves past that without explaining himself. And he says, all of you care about your family. And you're kind. Foolishly kind. The three who were with these pipsqueaks, do you know how they died? They couldn't shoot me. They hesitated to shoot a human. I was wounded and they had the advantage in the numbers and the opportunity. But instead, I just curb stomped them with my gun. I was able to kill them so easily. He's human. He'll feel pain. And if we kill him, the life we took won't come back. They probably imagined those things. Those fucking idiots. Now they're dead. So anyway, no, you're gonna kill me. So...
It's one of those things where like, man, I wish this dude had actually done something to this point where I'd be like, that's kind of cool. He's like a villain, but he's just sitting there. He's like, evil, 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 evil. I'm going to hold a gun up to this child and I'm going to kick this cat at the same time. And I'm going to fly on my taxes. And I'm going to downvote the new She-Ra show. Like, he's just like, I'm going to do maniacally evil things.
Yeah, I guess the idea is just that he's been so in control to this point, but he hasn't really gotten to do very much up to now. So it doesn't feel like it's like, okay, yeah, here's this guy. He's got to be a hostage.
Say that the trauma of being in that explosion has made him unhinged at this point, and that's
sure,
kind of what's going on. But it's just not interesting in the way that they want. It's just like a very like silly speech that he starts shouting out.
In order for, a character breaking to be interesting, you have to actually have a character there to begin with. And Andrew's just been like a guy lurking, hunting them down. And the only thing that we've known about him is that he's just like an unfeeling, sadistic monster to this point. He's like, if you're just cattle, you're going to die. It's like, okay, that's a character. So, yeah, I think that if he had been given more build along the lines of like Crone, then yeah, him breaking would have been much better, but whatever. Oh no, some children died, Chris.
Yeah, again, like this is the thing I was kind of hoping we never get to in the Promised Neverland, where like they've killed so many of the kids now, and you're like, I don't know any of these kids. Like,
yeah,
I don't even know if all these are kids from like fucking Goldie Pond or if they're kids from the actual farm who I've just like they just never gave attention to. Like it feels like a couple are just people. Like I don't even know who they are or whatever. Like they just, I don't know, they're dudes and they got killed and they got ganked.
It does feel cheap to have, Emma say like, I'll save my whole family, and then it introduces people from Goldie Pond and then they're like the disposable ones. It's like, that's lazy.
Not the point of what I think Emma's goal is. Like she's trying to save everybody, so it feels like for as much effort that was given to like, hey, what was Hugo is dead now, should have also been given to those two dudes who died in the bunker, because you're like, Emma should care about those two as much as she cares about Hugo for her character.
They're all her family in her mind, and it's really being passed over. And Andrew's like, yeah, I killed those kids that were with these two, the ones that have names. They survived.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
If you don't make me care about the characters, I'm not going to. So, all right, let's move on to Black Clover.
Was there Black Clover this week? Yeah, I think it is. I'm like forgetting if there was one or that's right.
Well,
so
it's the climax of the fight, and then it's like, okay, other stuff happened.
So, page 181, Spatial Mage Brother. So last time Finral teleported in Yami and the great hero Jack the Ripper so that they could take down the elf that's possessing Langris, that's his name, possessing Langris. And he's like, oh, you did this, but I'm a little bit faster, and you went to the trouble of calling him just so you could all die together. And Finral's like, no, these guys are Magic Knight captains. They're definitely going to handle this somehow. And they do. They specifically do. They just clown him and knock him out. But then his power...
But then he's not knocked out!
Yeah, his power is still like going crazy, and he creates like a giant cross of energy at one point. Or no, he creates giant orbs that rip across in the sky, it looks like. And they're just tearing everything, yeah.
The entire castle's ceiling gets eaten away, basically.
Yeah, so like, whoa, this is crazy. What are we supposed to do about this? And Finral's like, no, it's actually over at this point. Because he's so fucking crazy at this point, he's never going to notice my magic. So Finral literally just teleports in behind him and punches the shit out of Langris. And we get like kind of this little flash, or I guess imagery to say like Langris is like this trap boy inside of his own mind, And he's like, for a brilliant little brother, you sure cause a lot of trouble, seriously. And it's like, oh, Finral showed up. And he's like, sorry, I'm weak, so it took me a while, Angrus. And like, to help him out, because he's now... Is it a thing that when you beat the elf, they lose the thing? Or is it solely that they need to have the spell undone?
It's friendship, Chris. It's friendship and hugging.
Yeah, all right. So
they do. There is specifically a thing, though, that they actually have to have, like, their magic negated, but hang on a second. Yeah, so Langer still has the pointy ears.
Yeah, so he still is an elf for the moment, but they knock him out, and there's a little moment where they both fall down. Their hands are kind of like on top of one another. So
yeah,
yay! Finral saved his brother. Then we cut over, and it's Gauch flying in. And he's like, I'm here. And it's Leash showing up, or Patrick. I can't fucking remember. Every these goddamn characters have like 6 names.
It's Leashed that we thought was Leashed, not actual OG Leashed. So Leashed's brother, Patry.
Mm-hmm. So Patry arrives, and he's the guy who's inside of Gauch is like, what, you're just looking like Leash now? And there's like a whole thing of them being like talking. Rhea shows up there, and there's kind of like a reunion between them. They're like, wow, the gang's all here. And I'm like, I could tell the chemistry between you guys is intense.
Hey, remember those things that we used to do 1,000 years ago? Yeah.
Good times. And they're like, yeah, I guess Latchery must have gone on quite the rampage. All that's left is to fit the final magic stone in the pedestal of the castle and activate a spell that uses the whole kingdom. And yeah, they already have it, because somebody had that stone and got taken over. I can't tell the speech bubbles above their head, which I assume is intentional. And they're like, we'll wash away the mouse that's been afflicted with a side effect of the forbidden magic and complete our reincarnation. We'll wipe out the humans, regaining a world that populated only by peaceful elves. And we cut over to Yam, and he's like, a lot of tough dudes on that butt rock. Because it just looks like there's a butthole on the rock. That's what my mind went to.
I think that's supposed to be Yuno.
What, there? Oh, Yuno had the stone?
He has a necklace that he had as a kid. So I think that's supposed to be the implication.
Then they don't have it unless they're like, well, we'll just...
because Yuno is an elf, but he's got control of himself,
Mm-hmm.
So...
Maybe they don't realize that, or maybe he's thinking that...
Or maybe he's saying this like, no. This thing is still going according to plan.
Yuno's not so awesome he can negate the spell on his own, maybe. But yeah, Yami's like, I wonder what my idiots are doing. If they're sitting on their butts, I'm gonna flatten them all. And then fucking Jack the Ripper is like, no, I'll slash them. And it sounds like it was meant to continue, because Yami's like, no, I'm gonna, like, they were just gonna sit and be like, no, I'm gonna kill all my students. I'm gonna rip their jaws off. Yeah, well, I'm gonna punch their dicks so hard it goes through their eyeballs. He's like, well, I'm gonna cut off their fingers and feed them to their cat. And just like, wait, guys, it's getting kind of morbid. What are you?
I'm gonna kill them further. I'm gonna drag their family out in front of their eyes and murder them in front of them and watch their blood pour onto the carpet.
I thought these were your friends. No, they're his friends. I'm a serial killer. I'm Jack the Ripper.
I'm the great hero, Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, that's a chapter.
So yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about this. I do like that the fight with Flankers was decided because Finral was just like, I got this, and just teleports in front of him and punches him in the fucking face. But that's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, it is nice.
Okay. We gotta do a lot of housekeeping on One Piece. Because that's basically what happens here. A lot of stuff moves around. I'll say up front, this is like One Piece is going on break next week. And it's a pretty appropriate time to do so because, like, okay, yeah. A very important milestone, not milestone, but we got to a big stopping point, basically, in this arc. It's chapter 924. Huh. Well, that's the name of the chapter. So.
Oh, I wonder if someone was, like, saying it to, like, Oda. Or, like, Oda was like, chapter 294. What's the chapter title? And he's just like, huh? And he's like, oh, okay, that's wrote down. He's like, no, it's supposed to be like Act 1, Revenge of the Wano or something like that. He's like, no.
It's apparently it was something that had something to do with like what the Japanese version of the dialogue at one point was, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Luffy, of course, was taken out by Kaido in one shot after unleashing everything he had at him. Luffy is still alive, of course, no problem. So Law is there, and he's like, I better grab him and get the fuck out of here. But all of a sudden, he's hit by something in the arm, and that's when, once again, Hawkins shows up. And he says, yeah, so I just shot you with a sea prism stone bullet, or nail, rather. He says that only in Wano can you find the artisans capable of fashioning a sea prism stone so small. So Law's a bit fucked because he can't, use his devil fruit ability. So Basil jumps in with his sword in order to attack him. But we cut away before we can see how that unfolds over to Kaido. And he's, looking down on Luffy's unconscious body. And he says, it may be an indomitable spirit or an empty bluff, but he's been glaring at me this entire time. And everyone's like, he's knocked out, boss. What do you mean? And Kai's just like, he'll make a good soldier once his spirit is broken, so lock him up to, take him away. Also, don't write anything about pirates on the notice papers. Interest from the outer seas is forbidden. Very protective of what goes around in the kingdom, it looks like. But as some of his followers lean down to try and take Luffy, they suddenly just collapse. And they're like, whoa, what the hell's going on? And we see that, what's his face? The large samurai that was on the run earlier.
Ashura Doji, that's his name.
Yeah.
He called himself Shutenmaru, but...
Yeah. He says, like, it looked like Lord Odin's special trick. So that... And that guy who was passed out did it, apparently. And Kaido's like, another one of these assholes with the color of Supreme King. God damn, we don't need these people.
Soccer.
Fuck it. I'm dealing with Law later. I'm just going to go drink now.
It'd be great if he flied into like a giant balloon of liquor or something like that. He's like, I'm going to keep this around. It seems very impractical, but I need to get drunk quickly.
So... Law has managed to get away from Hawkins, and he's like, oh, shit. That sucks that they can actually just shoot sea stone bullets now. And he's like, I hate to leave Luffy behind, but, well, not much I can do about it. Basil says that, it's like, we'll track him down. He won't escape. And anyway, we've got one of the two of them. So that's good enough for now. We cut over to Okobore Town. And of course, people are recovering from the aftermath of the destruction that Kaido had caused, and also Luffy had caused by punching him into it. Oh no, wait, that happened elsewhere because he fought him in like the main town, not in Okobore. But yeah, after the food raids, basically. And there are people, of course, who are beat up as well. And Otsuru is caring for one of them, and this is just weird. It's so Kinemon shows up and he's like got one of the like bandit masks around his face. And he's like, because he's incognito, I guess. He doesn't want anyone to recognize him. He's like, oh, Otsuru, you're still so beautiful, but we can't be together until Lauren's wishes have been accomplished. But the important thing that happens is that while he's doing that, he happens to see Shutemaru, going around, and he walks around the building and he's like, oh, what the hell? Ashuradoji's here. Then we cut to Wano Castle, and Okiku sees that, like, yeah, of course everyone survived. But what happened was Shino, the old ninja, used her devil fruit ability to basically age the ground around them so that they sank into the mountain and were shielded from the explosion. And there's a brief little joke where, like, they've sunk into a pit, and a whole bunch of people are like, "Oh, we gotta get out of here! Otherwise, this sinkhole is gonna reach the ocean, and we're gonna drown." And up above the sinkhole, Sanji's like, "I finally carried all of the ladies out to safety." Just left the rest of them down there.
He's just like, "Good luck, everyone else."
Yeah. And I had forgotten. I was like, all right, Sanji can just fly basically now. Falling is not a problem as long as he's there to carry them. And between panels, yeah, he just gets everyone else out of there. And Okiku says that she has something important to pass on to everyone else. But then we cut elsewhere because Dogstrom has come across Otama, knocked out Otama, and she's still breathing, not dead as Luffy had suspected. And of course, Dogstrom is very pissed off about this because, like, oh, Kaido, come on, she's just a child. A little bit of time goes by, and an extra comes out, an extra edition of the newspaper, and we see the 3 Incognito Straw Hats all have the same reaction to the news about Luffy.
They all have not only the same reaction, they all start trying to say the same sentence, basically, with like each one abruptly ending faster.
Oh, hey, Luffy, he made it into...
The one that gets me is the Robin face. She's normally not the one who's involved in this stuff, and for her to be like, oh, Luffy's right.
And I'm not sure exactly what it is that they're specifically reacting to. I don't know if Luffy shows up in a really embarrassing way, or if it's that he tried to fight Kaido and lost.
That, or he may have been, like, they may have noted, like, criminal arrested or something like that.
Mm-hmm. But they recognize who Luffy is, so I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Well,
so
I assume it says like Luffy has like come to Wano and is being arrested or is joining Kaido or whatever. You know, they put out whatever propaganda they want.
Gotcha. Yeah, of course it's propaganda, right? So, and also the news of this reaches Zoro, who is sailing down some sort of a stream with someone, and apparently, actually, that's the thing. So he's also eating on the boat. And they're like, "Are you sure you could pay for this?" So I don't know. I guess it's some sort of like cruise canoe. I don't know. Then a day passes, and we go over to Udon in Wano, where there's this big old factory. And a bunch of slaves are laboring away in there. And then we see that someone has taken a poisonous fish over to this cell. And the guy who's doing it is like, so what's in this cage? And another guy just says, like, I don't know, but we throw in a poison fish a day, and we got to remove the bones before we toss it in there. I hear the fish were meant for executions, only this one's living off of them. I think one of them is like, could it be like a sharkadile? But then why would, I don't know. So something is inside of this cell that can live off of these fish things. And at that moment, Luffy is led into the prison. He's, got cuffs on his hands. His face is all bandaged up because he got beaten to shit by Kaido. And everyone's, of course, mocking him because, you guys ass kicked and he's just this scrawny guy if you don't know anything about him. But he's, glaring at everyone. They're like, tough guy here. And then one of the jailers just has a fishbone corpse thrown into his neck through the cell that it was fed into. And they're like, oh my God, I told you to take the bones out. What's in that cell? Nobody knows. Luffy is led further down and thrown into a different cell, topples head over heel, and lands against the opposite wall. And his wall happens to share the wall of Eustace Kid's cell. And both of them say at the same time as they're stewing in their cells, I'll get you, Kaido. And they're like, huh? And the same guitar-playing woman who introduced the land of Wano shows up, strumming her guitar as the curtains close on Wano Act 1.
Literal curtains close. I fucking love that. That full aesthetic is going to go on, I guess, throughout this arc, that we're literally going to get like a 3-act play. Because the curtains close on the scene we're watching to. It's not like they like pan out and it's like a
yeah.
They're just like, nope, here are the curtains. This is a fucking play. That's how this is going to be framed. It's pretty dope. And I am super excited for this because, I mean, Kid is such an important character of the Supernovas. So it's interesting, but like it adds a lot of questions for me to wonder now. Like, so what happened to Apu? We haven't seen him. He's the third part of this group. What happened to Killer, who is like Kid's first mate? So that's another character who should be out there somewhere. Like, it's definitely setting up for this idea of like, oh, maybe it's going to be like this big alliance. The same alliance I think we actually saw back in Shinbody Archipelago when it was Kid, Law, and Luffy fighting together against Kazaku. Or no, Kuma? Who'd they fight? I think it was Kazaku. But yeah, like they might be the three that have to team up together to take down Kaido. It's pretty exciting. I'm pretty pumped about it.
Do you think that the implication is supposed to be that it was Kid who is in the Dark Cell, or is that supposed to be someone else?
No, I think it's Kid because he has the same eyes.
Well, but it's kind of hard to tell.
I think it's specific.
Like he's got the same eyes. He's got the same eyes that Luffy has in the final page.
Well, they talk about how like it's like they're in there to kind of get beaten down enough that they'll like join the other side or whatever. So like these are strong people. I'm assuming it's the same person. I don't know. Maybe it's not. That was my assumption. Kid's in a different cell. People are saying different cell. I don't know. I assumed it was the same cell. I guess it would make sense if they keep noting that it's a person who can eat poisonous fish and never get sick. So maybe it's someone who has like an ability to eat poison and not die.
I don't know. All right. Let's finish things up then with World Trigger.
World Trigger!
World Trigger! It's World Trigger, chapter 167, Suzunari 1, part 2, on page 64 of the Shonen Jump Reader. There's a lot of numbers here is my point. So the rank war battle has actually begun now, with everyone being placed all over the map. Notably, Chika is inside of the main building, so immediately they're like, we gotta get her out of here. I do like that we have this map establishing where everyone is at the beginning, so you can see their comparative positions and also who's wearing a bagworm and stuff. And yeah, that's the first basically thing that happens. It's like, okay, yeah, you gotta move her outside. The commentators briefly discuss like, hey, do you think that there's a exact reason why Suzunari 1 shows that the map should be at night? And Ashihara, throws out some ideas and is like, well, you can provide visual support and agents can use night vision. So this shouldn't give experienced snipers much trouble. But if you have to switch back and forth with visual support between dark and well-lit areas, then that could create a bit more work for operators, especially Tamakoma 2, because they've got 4 people. And that does come into play in this chapter. Osamu issues some orders and, tells everyone, okay, everyone, converge, get together. And we do see some orders being exchanged between a few different teams. Azuma's team exchanged communications. We see Kageura using his attack trigger as a Spider-Man web slinger claw.
It is pretty dope.
It's pretty cool. And he's communicating with Zoe, and Yuzuru is on his way as well. Zoe basically immediately comes across Ko, and they're like, on. I think that they're separated by like they're on different balconies because this is a huge building that has something like like a total of like 8 floors. With I guess it's like 6. It's 6 floors and a roof, I should say. So and there's an opening in the middle of it, so you can fire between balconies on different floors. Then we go. There's also Taichi crawls on his belly in order to creep around a bit so that he doesn't get spotted by Suzunari's captain. And
isn't Taichi part of Suzunari?
Not Suzunari. Kageru. It's Kageru squad, Suzunari squad, and Azuma squad.
Yeah.
No. This guy's the captain of Suzunari squad. The blonde guy that Taichi comes across. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his captain.
Oh, who's he? I got confused because he like spots someone running down the hall.
Koala, which I don't know if that's supposed to be. It must be one of the dudes from Azuma squad, one of their attackers, the blonde one, I think.
There's too many blondes in this fight, I swear.
There's also a lot of fucking, like, mooks in the fight that I don't care about.
Stupid hat. So, the big important thing that happens is that Okudera triggers his bagworm, which surprises the commentators. So the only thing that they think is like, well, he had the bagworm on before, and it's kind of late to, start being covert, and it's also too early to be doing sneak attacks. So like, he's probably just doing it in order to confuse the other operators. As he's disappearing and reappearing, they've got to, take notice of that, and then they get distracted. So this is probably something that's, he's learned just from being underneath Ozma Squad. More gunfighting breaks out, just like straight up a firefight occurs between the balconies between Zoe and two members of Suzunari. And as Osamu's creeping around, he hears the firefight, and then randomly he and Okudera happen to go down like the same alley. And they're like, oh shit. And Okudera immediately whirls around and engages him. And everyone's like, oh fuck. And because they were both using bagworm, they didn't realize what was happening until they actually visually spotted each other. And immediately, oh god, I forgot I'm blanking on her name. Operator for Tamakoma.
Oh, Shiori.
Shiori's apologized, like, oh, that's on me. I didn't notice. And Yuma stops in his tracks from where he was going in order to go and back up Osamu. And Osamu just says, like, no, listen, I'll just, lure Ozma Squad towards you guys. Our strategy is going to be the same. Just keep doing what you're going to do before. And we basically end the chapter with just like, here's everything that's going on right now. Ozma Squad is converging on Captain Mikumo. Kageura Squad versus Suzunari in the upper floors are engaged in a gunfight. And then I forget the blonde commentator's name. He mentions to Yuitsuka, the girl.
Ninomiya Squad, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Member of Ninomiya Squad who's not Ninomiya.
Right. He says, so you haven't actually seen Suzunari's latest strategy, because these days they've been cooking up something a little different. And that's where the chapter ends, as Ko draws this black-bladed trigger from his side.
I wonder if it's like a sword that, because usually when something becomes black, it has the weight added to it.
It's very important, yeah.
So if it's a sword that maybe if it hits you, weighs you down. I don't know. It seems weird because usually the sword would cut, but.
Mm-hmm. It's a very weird-looking sword too. So.
Very intriguing. We also see that like Hughes has gotten into the building now. Yuma's still on top of the roof, so. We're seeing the members converge, but yeah, Osamu is in a pretty bad spot. Did they note where Chika's still in the... No. Well, she's on bagworm, so no one knows exactly where she's at right now. So maybe Chika can help out Osamu, but yeah.
It seems as though she did get outside of the building, because you see there is a shot that shows, like, here's where everyone who's in the mall is. Mm-hmm. So. But
I don't know if that's supposed to be... what they can determine without the bagworms.
Well, you can see Taichi on the map, and he's wearing a bagworm.
That's right. So yeah, she must have, I guess, maybe got out of the mall.
Yeah, because she started off inside of it, and she was actually heading out. So
I'm so pumped for the next chapter, Nick. And then it goes monthly after that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so happy it's back. All right.
Yeah. Let's close things out.
All right. I think, I guess I will give my chapter of the week to, I'm going to give it to One Piece, because I do really like that ending. There's like something aesthetically to the way it's all being like put together that feels special and kind of cool that I really dig. And I do just love Robin's reaction there. Like all of them have great, but it's just the fact that Robin never is one of those people, and it's right. It's a great shot. So I'll give it to One Piece for my favorite series of the week.
I am going to give it to Seven Deadly Sins. I really just liked the way that the fight itself ended up playing out in these two chapters, and I love that Escanor did get to actually kick his ass by stabbing him through the stomach through the chest rather with his finger. So.
I don't know who my character of the week is. I'm trying to think, and my mind goes to... It might just be Ida.
I'm gonna go with us. I'm gonna go with Tsukasa. Okay. I like the establishment and this kind of this changing of him to
Food Wars Tsukasa or Dr. Stone Tsukasa.
Dr. Stone Tsukasa. Food Wars Tsukasa didn't do anything except get
he succeeded. He made a really tasty looking dish.
Whatever. Who cares? That's a good point, but I don't care. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on smashcast.tv/RoloT and twitch.tv/RoloT, where we start recording the show each week, usually about Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. But next week, we're probably going to be doing it on Wednesday, considering that next week here in the United States, it's going to be Thanksgiving. So probably going to be recording on Wednesday instead. You can check out our past episodes on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com. You can check us on iTunes, check us on YouTube, leave comments and ratings and subscribe and all that good stuff so that you can help out and we'll defeat the woodworkers and dominate the hobby section of the podcast and all that good stuff. Also, be sure to follow your hosts.
We're going to help Becky Lynch get back at what's her name? Nick, we just got to ride every popular train going right now.
Well, she did get a concussion, so.
Wait, we're going to help her. We're going to figure out a technology to undo concussions and reverse time so we can go back and get that Survivor Series matchup we've all been waiting for. Woo!
Just that one use of reversing concussions, though.
A lot of football players are going to want this technology, but we have to destroy it. It's too dangerous. Just like Reed Richards taught us.
If you could cure cancer, you shouldn't.
If we help people with their concussions, something worse than concussions will come along.
You can also follow your hosts on Twitter at RoloT and at NickFTime, and follow the podcast account as well at WMR Podcast. Special thanks go out to our Patreon supporters. Support allows us to create all sorts of fun bonus content for you guys to enjoy. And if you want to leave us feedback, send us a question for our Q&A episodes, or suggest a manga for us to read, you can do that stuff via email, weeklymangarecap@yahoo.com. But also be sure to check out the Discord channel. You can leave a recommendation there. And Ninja X3i has done a great job of compiling a whole bunch of recommendations that you guys have left for us, as well as all of the series that we've covered prior to this. Special thanks go out as well to C-Man, our title card artist, and to Infamous Planet for all of this stuff that you do. Speaking of Infamous Planet.
I was going to say, I want to give a specific shout out to Steve Mann for the title card art this week. I thought it was super awesome. And if you ever like any of Steve Mann's title card art, make sure to hit him up on Twitter. Just be like, yo, I love that title card you did for Weekly Manga Recap this week.
Yeah.
Again, Steve Mann Art on Twitter.
But speaking of Infamous Planet, Chris, He is actually one of the people who suggested the manga that we're going to be covering for next time.
Is it something less garbage than MXO?
Well, we'll see. It's called Kumo desu ka? Nanika, which means I'm a spider. So what? Basically, it is about a guy who is part of a class that is all killed, and they reincarnate into various different things. But one of them is reincarnated into a spider.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then. Very good. Let's check that out, then. All right. Do we have anything we want to go off on?
No.
All right. Great energy. That's how we get to the top.
I love doing this every week, Chris. Can't you tell?
I feel it. Use a Rio over there.